Oh, cool.
Welcome, everybody, to the Spicy Take Sports podcast. This is the first episode of this podcast. We're excited to get this up and going. And I want to first give an idea of what this podcast is going to be. In this world that we live in right now, politics run everything. Politics kind of shows who believes what, and you just kind of get into a lot of fights. But sports has always been a bonding experience for a lot of people in my life and in Colton and Caleb's life. And because of that, we want to make a podcast here that is kind of a bonding moment for all sports fans. Keep the politics crap out of there. Keep anything that people do just for clicks and all that. Keep that out of there. We want to actually just do a straight up sports podcast. No holds barred, complete, just straight up opinions. We're going to all have our biases and we're not going to hide those. We're going to try to be as unbiased as possible, but honestly, that's not going to happen.
It's going to be a challenge.
Exactly. We're going to have, as you can see, my hat, my background, unfortunately, I'm a Vikings fan. I'm not going to hold that back. And definitely my predictions can be different because of that. Same with Colton with Falcons, same with Caleb with Packers. It's going to be like that. And it's going to be a challenge to be unbiased, but we're going to try our hardest to be. But we'll be straight up and honest that we are not going to be unbiased completely.
Indeed. We'll work on it.
We will. So I want to go ahead and start out with some introductions about who we are, some of our favorite teams, and just so we kind of get an idea of who we are, and so the audience kind of understands who we are. So I'll let you start, Colton.
All right. So with MLB, I'll have to go with the Bravos, Atlanta Bravos.
Mm-hmm.
With basketball, probably the hometown Magic, fortunately. Misses Dwight Howard days. Falcons, and then the Georgia Bulldogs. Those are my main teams. And then when I do dabble in hockey, I'd probably go with the Predators since they don't have a hockey here in Atlanta. Gentlemen.
Caleb.
Alrighty. So for NFL, may or may not be a Packers fan in case you can't tell. College.
Never thought so.
Yeah, no, I'm really low key on it. College, I'd say Gators fan. For NHL, I'm a big NHL fan, Chicago Blackhawks fan. I'd love to see Kane get one more Stanley Cup before he retires, at least.
You have enough already.
There's no such thing. For the MLB, we'll see. It makes up for it because for the MLB, I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, and we've only had one in 120 something years, so that hurts. That doesn't help, but at least it was recent.
Yeah.
And
at least you didn't get a 5 World Series in the 90s and win one. It's a little soft spot for Elijah and I.
Yeah, so even though they have some really harsh history as fans as well, unfortunately, I have some really harsh feelings as well. For me, my NFL team obviously is the Vikings. It's just a heartbreaking life. It is missing field goals every single chance that you have a chance to win something. It's great.
That background is so appropriate.
Love every single bit of it.
Yeah.
No, I've not chucked this house across the house multiple times because I'm pissed off. I've not done that before. Never.
No, you love kickers.
Absolutely. Blair Walsh is my idol. Absolutely. But NBA, I actually do. I'm a very lucky NBA fan. I am a Celtics fan. Grandfather grew up a Celtics fan, so he kind of passed that on to me, and I luckily got that one. But he also passed on the Vikings, which is what it is. MLB, big Braves fan, just like Colton.
Go Bravos.
We're actually meeting up pretty soon to go see a game a game of 2 actually, but up in Atlanta. Yep. So looking forward to that. But
just first time at the ballpark.
Looking forward to it. But yeah, the Braves, obviously it's sometimes really fun to be a fan of them, knowing that they have been so good for so long, but they still only won 1 title, and that's just the story of my life. At least they have one. But and then college, have 2 college teams. Grew up a big Kentucky basketball fan, and Kentucky football kind of comes along with that. It's kind of like the ugly stepbrother. But big Kentucky basketball fan. They're actually the only team I've ever seen of mine. Well, them and the Celtics favorite team that actually won a championship in my own, like in front of my eyes. That's just the story of my life. But then college football, huge, really big UCF fan, alumni. Caleb is too, but Caleb hates UCF. But yeah, so.
Well, at least y'all have seen your teams win it. I've seen the Magic lose to Kobe in the finals. I've seen Georgia blow the lead against Alabama in the national championship. I've seen Falcons. Obviously, I don't have to repeat that, but we all know. And then the Braves choked in the 3-1 lead to the Dodgers in LCS last year. So
yeah, I
and
mean,
then the Preds also lost.
Let's say,
so
yeah, my Stanley Cup and my NHL team as well, being the Predators, they've gotten beat in the Stanley Cup lately too. It's just a great life. I mean, as you can tell with this podcast, we have 3 people. We have one that actually has a winning franchise group, and then the other 2 have absolutely god awful franchises. It's great, but that should at least let you realize that we're not gonna be biased because our teams are good. So, so because of that, I just want this podcast is gonna be very much kind of off the cuff. We're gonna have ideas of what we're gonna do, but it's never gonna be just straight up right off, like everything's scripted out. That's not gonna happen. That doesn't make it fun. We're here to have fun, and I hope that the listeners are having fun as well by just listening to us.
I think Pat McAfee, but less drunk and famous.
Yeah,
exactly.
We have
a sober podcast.
We have accountants instead of kickers. It's great. But because of that, we're having I'm looking forward to have this podcast. We're going to have when it comes to these big podcasts that we're going to have is all 3 of us. It's mostly going to be NFL and college football. Those are the ones we all 3 have some really good expertise in. We're all kind of into the recruiting. We're into the rankings and all this stuff and about the individual players. So those are things we're probably best suited for all 3 of us. But we will have stuff about the MLB, NHL. We'll have some guests on as well that are more experts in that than some of us are. And those will usually be in some shorter videos that'll be posted earlier on in the week. And they'll usually be specific topic based because certain people, like, for example, me and Colton know more about the MLB, while Caleb knows more about hockey. Me and Caleb know more about racing than Colton does. And because of that, we kind of are going to have these shorter videos early on in the week that's going to be more specifically topic based. And this is going to be more of the NFL, college football, and obviously any like big time news, whether it be NBA, MLB. We'll get that NHL. We'll get that touched up as well on this. But for the more in-depth topics about the non-football sports, will majority be in those shorter videos earlier on.
Indeed. We'll definitely get some more knowledge on the sports. So one sport I want to gain some more knowledge on is UFC. I feel like it's a very up-and-coming sport here. And then, if one day Jake Paul can get knocked out, that'd be great. But
I'm so pissed he won that fight. I'm so pissed he won that fight.
Rigged, man.
He's making a joke out of boxing.
No, literally.
But so after we got that intros out of the way, we're going to get to the first main topic of this podcast. And it's the NFL predictions. Obviously, season starts in a week and a half. I've got a fantasy draft scheduled for Sunday. I'm going to have another one scheduled for next week as well. We all play fantasy football. But we also all have our, obviously, fandom here, if you can't tell by the backgrounds of all of our things here. So we went ahead and we went through Playoff Predictor's website, and we decided we were going to go pick every week of the NFL schedule. That way we can keep at least most of our biases out of it, literally just going through, picking who's going to win each week and seeing what the results give us. Personally, I got some stuff that I had no clue I was going to get. Did not think I had any choice because I thought teams were going to fall off. But the way the schedule broke out, it just ended up being a different way. This website actually gives you the tiebreakers and everything as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all 3 of us, and we're going to tell each other who we have winning each of our divisions, who are the 3 wild cards, and then we'll go into the playoff matchups that we had for ourselves, as well as the Super Bowl with the prediction of the score. And if there's any like surprise teams that you thought were going to be really bad or that you thought were going to be really good that ended up being bad when you picked the schedule, we'll talk about those as well. So I'll go ahead and start with mine. So mine, I'll be completely honest, it was very weird the way it came out. There was a good two or three teams that I had no clue were going to be even close to my playoffs. So I'm going to start with the NFC. So the NFC, the way it worked out is I had much more depth in the conference, while the AFC had a lot more strength at the top, but a little bit less depth throughout the rest of the conference. So in the NFC, I had Tampa Bay getting the number 1 seed win the NFC South. I had them going 13-4 and getting the bye. I had Green Bay at 11-6 getting the 2 seed, just squeaking out the NFC North. 3 seed, I had Seattle winning the NFC West at 11-6. The 4 seed, I had the Washington football team going 9-8 and winning the NFC East, because the NFC East is an absolute dumpster fire. I mean, it's just sad how bad that division is, honestly. The fact that 9-8 is going to win the division more than likely is quite sad.
Yeah, that's how it's been the last couple of years, though. I mean, it's been that for a while.
Yeah, it's sad because you have some historic franchises in that division, and you literally have them going. Lord.
Yeah, it is.
That division has the highest variance because on the one hand, the Giants added some big pieces. I mean, they added, wide receiver from the Detroit Lions, Galladay. They're getting Saquon Barkley back. They added some offensive linemen. There's a lot of different moving pieces there that we'll get to my picks, obviously, but I'll say there's like a really high variance there where I think the winner of the NFC East could do as well as 12 or 13 games, especially when you consider you're adding another game this year. But yeah, they could also fall off and win below 500. I could see that a team going 8-9 if it gets bad enough and still winning that division.
I will say that's the one division though. I have Washington winning it at 9-8, but I could easily see any of the 4 teams win the division because I don't feel like any of those 4 teams are supremely that good of teams.
Yeah.
I can't think I can see the Eagles. I'm sorry, Eagles fans, but I don't think I can see the Eagles.
I don't think I could either, but I mean, if Jalen Hurts steps up or whatever, you could, I mean, with how poor the division is, it just takes a couple of big games.
Yeah.
Now my wild card teams, I have Minnesota, obviously a little bit biased. I have them going 11-6. I do have them losing the division though by tiebreaker. And then I have Arizona going 11-6 and being my 6th seed. This is probably the biggest shocker. Well, could be the biggest shocker. The next one could also be the biggest shocker, but this could be the biggest shocker as a playoff team. Actually, when I was doing the predictions and I was going week by week, they actually were leading the NFC West the whole time until they got beat by Seattle. In my predictions, I just think Kyler Murray is going to take a big step. He was good last year. He wasn't great last year, but he was good last year. Had some big time moments. I think the defense is going to be better this year than they were last year. I know they lost Pat Pete. They added a JJ Watt, and I feel like they're just going to be a better overall defense. And then I just feel like with another year of DeAndre Hopkins with Kyler Murray, that offense could be deadly. So I have them going 11-6 and being the 6th seed. And surprisingly, I have New Orleans going 10-7 and being the 7th seed. I actually, going into that, thought New Orleans was going to go 8-9, 7-10 around there. But the way the schedule broke out, I just felt like there were a lot of games. Like their primetime games were like Dallas at home. And obviously with the hurricane, prayers out for the people, for the victims of that, by the way.
Sure.
Obviously with the hurricane, the home field advantage kind of isn't as strong, I guess. Hopefully they get that stadium back up and running pretty soon. But
in case you haven't heard, games are being played at TIAA Bank Field right now in Jacksonville, in case you haven't heard the news today.
So hopefully they get that up and running. I'm not sure how quickly it will be. That was a very horrible storm. But and I did this before the hurricane actually hit them, before the news was announced that they actually were going to play games other than the Superdome. So this could change, obviously. But part of it is because I think the Superdome is such a great home field advantage that I could see that if they do get back into playing at home, that could see them easily making it a 10-7. And if they don't, the teams that just missed the playoffs, I have the Rams at 10-7 and the Niners at 10-7. The way this worked out, I literally have all 4 teams in the NFC West going 10-7 because I think the division is just that loaded. Because I think Seattle has been in the playoffs every year since Russell Wilson got there pretty much. So it's hard to have them out of it. Arizona, I think, is going to be the surprise team in the league. And then the Rams and Niners, I mean, at 10-7, those are still really good teams. I mean, the Rams added Matt Stafford, so they got rid of Jared Goff. So, I mean, that will obviously make the team better. And then San Francisco, 2 years ago, were in the Super Bowl. The only reason I don't have them getting better than 10-7 is because I'm not sure what the quarterback situation is going to be. Whether it be, I'm not sure if I trust Lance as a rookie going out there, and I definitely don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback. I just don't. And then also have Atlanta at 9-8, just missing it out as well. I didn't think that was going to happen. I actually thought that was they had 6 or 7 wins, and they ended up having 9. And that actually would have changed. That actually was about to change as well. I ended up picking Washington to beat them, where they actually would have been 10-7, and Washington would have been 8-9. But I ended up picking Washington one of the first weeks of the year to beat them. In the AFC, I have Buffalo getting the number 1 seed by tiebreaker at 14-3. I just think their schedule really breaks out very easy for them. I'm not as high on New England as a lot of the other people are. I like Mac Jones. I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't think he's going to be great, and especially not as a rookie. And then Miami, I think is going to be pretty good, but also the Jets are in that division. So those are 2 pretty good victories. And Buffalo's schedule just broke out pretty easily this year to begin with. So I think Buffalo's going to get the 1 seed. KC also have 14-3, but I have Buffalo winning the head-to-head to get the bye week. I mean, KC is KC. Pat Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen, and he's a freaking 4th-year player. It's kind of nuts to think about. But I have KC as a 2 seed. I have Tennessee at 12-5, getting the 3 seed. I don't think the Julio addition's as big as people made it out to be, but I still think that's that offense could be deadly if Ryan Tannehill keeps playing like he's been playing lately.
Yeah, I mean, as a Falcons fan, I mean, I always love Julio, but he hasn't played a full season, I believe, since, was it 2017? So, I mean, he's so injury prone recently. I mean,
I think that offense where you have Derrick Henry running the ball and you have the weapons of a AJ Brown and a Julio Jones, that could be deadly if it clicks. If they stay mostly healthy. Julio could even miss a few games, and I think they'd still be a really good team.
I agree.
I have Baltimore at 11-6 winning the AFC North. I think that's going to be a dogfight between them and Cleveland. But I think Baltimore does win the head-to-head because Cleveland usually does choke in those big-time head-to-head matchups. So I think that Baltimore does pull off the division. Wildcard teams, my 5 seed, I have the Chargers going 12-5. So when I was doing the predictions, I was surprised they were 12-5. To be completely honest, they started out like 6-4, and ended up having them going like 6-1 to end the year. And I just think, and I'm really high on Justin Herbert. I could easily see the Chargers only winning 9 or 8 games, but also I could easily see them having a chance to win the division as well. Like I think they're that. I feel like that's the most unpredictable team in the league right now, because I think the Chargers. I think if Justin Herbert takes the next step, which one as good as he was last year, if he can take the next step, I could see him being in the MVP conversation this year.
I mean, I feel like that's been the Chargers organization for the last, like, even under Philip Rivers for like 15 years. They had the potential to be the best team in the division, but sometimes they just can't put together.
And they've had one of the worst injury ratings for like the rating system that they do is most games lost to injury by starters, and the Chargers have been in the top 5, I think, for 4 or 5 straight years. I read.
That's insane.
They always have bad injuries.
Derwin James is just coming back from injury. Now you're putting Brandon Staley in as a first-year head coach. There's a lot of different things that need to go right for the Chargers or could go wrong for the Chargers. Either way, really. Kind of a very big unknown in that division.
Number 6 seed, I got Miami at 10-7. They just missed out on the playoffs last year. I think they just get a little bit better this year. I think Tua is going to be a pretty solid quarterback. I don't think he's a franchise changer, but I think he's a solid quarterback, and he'll be doing just as well as Ryan Fitzpatrick was last year. But I don't feel like the depth of the AFC is as deep next year, this coming year. So I think that they get in at 10-7. And then Cleveland, I have as 10-7 as well as a 7 seed. I'll say they're a very dangerous 7 seed because I think Cleveland could easily win 12 to 13 games as well. The way the schedule broke out, I just have them losing some really close games to some really good teams, but they'll be battle tested for the playoffs. I say that, but we'll get to my playoff predictions in a second. And then my team that I just missing, I only have one team even above 500 other than these teams in the AFC. And I have Indianapolis at 9-8. Indianapolis is a very strange case. I could see them winning 12 to 13 games, but I also just don't think they have that it factor. I'm not sure how much I trust Carson Wentz. Not sure how much I trust the injury bug. No, they've already had Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz get hurt this offseason. And who knows, maybe this injury is even a little bit, maybe these injuries can linger and then you end up having, is Jacoby Brissett even on their team anymore as a backup?
No, he's for Miami now.
Didn't think so.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you got yourself a little bit less of a
Easton's
strength
the
there.
backup.
Yeah.
Easton's the
Jacob
backup.
I just don't trust a guy like Easton to come in and lead a team to the playoffs if that happened. And Carson Wentz has been injury prone since he got hurt that 1 year.
I heard that the quarterback from Texas, Erlinger,
Oh yeah.
he's actually having a really good camp. But they're
Really?
saying he may be a QB2, yeah.
Wow. Well, hopefully he does. I mean, I like Ellinger a lot, but I'm just not sure how he is an NFL quarterback.
His 6th round pick. I mean, it would be Minshew-esque if he did come in and do that.
Yeah.
I think would be the comparison.
All right. So playoff picks in the NFC, I have Green Bay beating New Orleans. Again, I don't think New Orleans is that good. It's just the way that it's slipped. I think Green Bay beats New Orleans. I have Arizona upsetting Seattle. I think I had Seattle beating Arizona both times in the regular season. I think it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. Just really difficult, especially when a team's as good as I think Arizona is going to be. I don't think you beat them 3 times. And I do have Minnesota over Washington football team. It could be a little bit biased. I don't think so. I think there's the better team than Washington. But I also think Washington could be could definitely win that game for sure. Then in the AFC, I have Kansas City beating Cleveland. I know I said Cleveland's battle tested. They'll be battle tested. I think they'll be a really tough 7 seed. If you run into the buzzsaw of KC, I think it's just tough. I mean, Kansas City's been in the Super Bowl back-to-back years. They've won one and then lost the next one. But you've got Pat Mahomes coming back for another year, just consistently being himself. I just see Kansas City because they are so strong and they've been in this spot multiple times. I think it's a very close game, and I think it's the best game that anyone would give KC all year. And I think KC does pull it off. Tennessee, I have up beating Miami. I mean, I just don't trust Tua in the playoffs. Just don't. And then I have the Chargers I think the Chargers do beat the Ravens. Not sold on Lamar as a playoff quarterback. I think he's good, just not sold on him being a playoff quarterback. In the conference championship, the divisional round, my bad. I have Tampa beating Arizona. I think Arizona's gonna be good. I just don't think they can beat Tampa and Tampa. And then I have Green Bay beating Minnesota. Green Bay just always has Minnesota's number, especially when the marbles are on the table. It's really tough for Minnesota to get that win. And then I have in the AFC, I have Buffalo beating the Chargers. I think Buffalo's very, very good. And then I have Kansas City beating Tennessee. And then I have Kansas City beating Buffalo in the conference championship game. I just think Kansas City is an absolute buzzsaw. And this year, after completely overhauling their offensive line, in my opinion, for the better, they're going to be a Super Bowl team. And then I do have Green Bay upsetting Tampa in the conference championship game. I mean, I don't ever want to doubt Tom Brady because every time you doubt Tom Brady, he always goes out there and proves you wrong. But I think this is the year that Aaron Rodgers does get it with the whole, get back to the Super Bowl, especially with it being more than likely his last year in Green Bay. There's going to be a certain chip on his shoulder. He's going to try to go out there and make him. And then I do have Kansas City beating Green Bay in the Super Bowl, though, 38-28. I don't trust the Packers defense enough to hold down the Kansas City offense. But all right. Now, I don't know which one you want to go first with your predictions.
I'll take it. So I'm going to start in the NFC as well. And start with the North. I have the Packers winning the division. I'm going to put them at 14-3. The Packers have a really, really difficult schedule this year. That's probably a little bit of my bias showing. Because you've got games on the schedule like Kansas City, Cleveland, the Baltimore Ravens. There's just so many games in there that are losable games, not to mention your divisional games, which are always difficult. That, I mean, based purely on team skill, I think the Packers are like a 14-3 team, maybe even 15-2 based on who they're playing, but you always tend to lose a couple that you don't think you'll lose. Mm-hmm. So somewhere between 14-3 and 12-5 wouldn't surprise me. but I have them winning the division there. And I also have them at number 1 seed. They beat out the Buccaneers in a tiebreaker, who are also 14-3, who are the number 2 seed. The Bucs, I think that every Tom Brady team that's been really good, and I think this is a really good Buccaneers team, has a galvanizing moment where they lose to a team that they shouldn't. I had them losing to the Colts, and kind of a shocker with the Colts at home. And after that, they just started ripping off wins. And that's usually how it is. There's like a early to mid-season loss for Tom Brady's team. Everyone's like, oh gosh, Brady threw 2 or 3 interceptions. Are they done? Blah, 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 blah. And then he just goes on and does everything like he always does.
And then they lost to the Bears last year, and then they won, like 7 or 8 straight, won Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to happen again, something like that. Then we go to the East. I have, this is my most surprising thing. I have the Washington football team at 12-5.
Whoa.
Wow,
Yes.
That's spicy.
Yeah, that's my spicy take, right? I have a lot of faith in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm not sure that that's warranted necessarily, but I think that you put him on a team that is as talented as Washington is, particularly on defense. This is the most talented football team in defense possibly in the country. I mean, we're talking about a front four that pretty much every single player on their team would start for almost any other team, from Chase Young to all those defensive linemen from Alabama that they keep drafting. Then they just got in a new linebacker from Kentucky this year to put in a middle linebacker to start. It very much reminds me of, yeah. It reminds me of the team that Ron Rivera coached in 2015 with Cam Newton, kind of on the defensive side of the ball. And on the offensive side, you just can't beat weapons like Terry McLaurin, and they're so good that they're dropping Peyton Barber. Now, Peyton Barber wasn't a good running back, but I mean, we're talking about they have undrafted free agents like Jarrett Patterson now, who's going to back them up, who's, returning kicks for touchdowns and stuff like that in the preseason. So I really feel strongly that the football team has enough weapons around Fitzpatrick that even if he's dropping 12 interceptions in a season, they'll be beating out most of the teams they're playing with, particularly because I have them going 5-1 in the division. That provides a lot of wins.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good. Oh, awesome. Sorry, I just got an update saying that we can go more than 40 minutes for this podcast. Awesome. Cool. But I think that Fitzpatrick thing could be. He's one of those guys I think is very hit or miss. I think he's going to be. He's always been that his whole career. I mean, even last year with Miami, he got benched, but then they put him right back in there because Tua couldn't do as well as he was. Yeah. I do think that. I think that's definitely a spicy take, but I think it's definitely plausible for sure. I mean, if last year they made the playoffs and almost beat Brady with Taylor Heineke and a crippled Alex Smith playing quarterback, if Fitzpatrick plays anything like he did last year for Miami, Washington will be, I think, definitely is your favorite for that division. And I could see winning 12 games if that defense is as good as they were last year, because Chase Young's that good too. So probably defensive player of the year this year.
Yeah. And so the football team is the number 4 seed at 12-5. So my number 3 seed comes from the West. I was just going by order of division. The Rams are going to be my number 3 seed, and they're at 14-3. I did not expect them to come out that high because I think that the West is an absolute buzzsaw. But as an NFC North fan, I have seen Matthew Stafford just drop an absolute, bucket load of touchdowns on the Packers over the years and lose simply because his defense couldn't stand up. I mean, and now he's got Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey on defense. I really like the Rams. I think the Rams are an early season favorite to go to the Super Bowl. Definitely in my top 3 teams in the NFC for sure. So then going to the wild card teams for the NFC, I have the Seahawks at number 5 at 12-5. It's just hard to say no to Russell Wilson. I think that defense is going to be garbage, but I think they'll be like a Cowboys team that actually believes they can win, because the Cowboys don't have a good defense either, but they don't know how to overcome it. Mike McCarthy is not a good head football coach, contrary to his own opinion. Pete Carroll is.
Packers fan talking there.
Yeah. Pete Carroll knows what he's doing, and he'll get that team to win games that they probably don't have the talent to pull out, but they'll do it because of Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf and the like. Then I have at my sixth
They also
seed.
got the most underrated receiver in the league in Tyler Lockett. That guy's insanely good.
Yeah, he placed way too low in the NFL top 100.
Oh, for sure.
Top for my number 6 pick. This might be even spicier than the football team. I have the Panthers going 11-6. I buy the Sam Darnold hype. He's got a top 3 receivers right now of Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and then the new kid from LSU, whose name is escaping me right now. Terrace Marshall. Terrace Marshall, who has been absolutely going off in the preseason. And then you've got Christian McCaffrey. It's by far the best offense that he's ever played in. And that's leaving out an offensive line that has good offensive linemen at a couple different positions too. And then Jeremy Chin at safety, couple pieces on the defensive line. I don't love the Carolina defense, but I think that with just enough improvement from some certain people that they'll get enough out of it. And again, I really think that the South is a weak division behind the Buccaneers. So we'll see. And then at number 7, this was a really tough decision for me. I went back and forth on this, but I gave the 49ers over the edge over the Cardinals. The Cardinals went 10-7 and were the number 8. So they barely missed out. And I had the 49ers at 7. It's not really any faith in Trey Lance or in Jimmy Garoppolo. Kyle Shanahan could scheme a Division II team into beating Alabama, I feel like. I mean, he is one of the best play callers in the business. The only question that defense has is returning from injury, which Nick Bosa has shown that he's absolutely fine and back to 100%. That's who really matters. And cornerback. And they haven't had any problems at cornerback really in the entire time that Shanahan's been there because they've been able to use scheme to make it up. So I think that they overcome kind of some quarterback questions. And I just don't trust the Cardinals. I really don't like their head coach. And I think head coach makes a massive difference in wins and losses. And I really don't like Cliff Kingsbury at all. I don't think he's a good head coach. I don't like that 4 wide set and refusing to run the ball unless absolutely necessary. So over in the AFC, we're going to start with the number 1 seed. It's going to be the Chiefs at 14-3. They beat out a tiebreaker with the Bills, who are the number 2 seed. Like Elijah said, there's really nothing for me. There's nothing to say about either one of those teams. They're both, S tier teams. They're going to be up there chasing a Super Bowl. Then at number 3, I have the Browns, also at 14-3, but I had them losing a couple of those tiebreaker games. Number 4, it's going to be the South with the Titans at 13-4. Number 5, I have the Ravens at 12-5. I almost gave them another loss to move them to 11-6, but it wouldn't have made sense just from what I've been looking at. They have a lot of home games are against their harder opponents, which bodes well for them to do better in those more difficult games. Then at number 6, this is my surprise, kind of like Elijah. I have the Chargers at 11-6. It's not quite as ambitious at 12-5, but I do think that bringing in a whole new regime, I'm going to bet on them to not have as many injuries. Justin Herbert will take the next step and they'll get to the playoffs as a wild card. Then at number 7, I have the Dolphins at 11-6. That defense is legit. And I think that Tua will take a step up into a game manager level quarterback that can at least not net you losses and probably net you a win or 2. I also had the Broncos at 11-6. They nearly lost out. They lost out on the tiebreaker to the Chargers and the Dolphins. And the Colts were 10-7 for my 9 seed. Really outside of that, I had every other team in the AFC except the Patriots with a losing record. I didn't think the AFC was very good this year. So then getting into the playoffs, we have the Packers at the number 1 seed, obviously. So I had the Washington football team beating the Seahawks. I think the lack of defense for the Seahawks is going to come back to bite them because the football team has the defense to actually stop Russell Wilson. Then I have the Rams destroying the Panthers. The Panthers just aren't ready for contention yet. I think the Panthers are a good team, but their record's bolstered by playing bad teams in this simulation. And then I have the 49ers getting beat by the Buccaneers. Don't bet against Tom Brady if at all possible. Then in the AFC, I have the Chiefs again are at the 1 seed. And I'm going to have an upset technically here in this proceeding where the Ravens beat the Titans. It's an exact repeat of this last year. Again, I just don't think the Titans match up well with what the Ravens do on offense and defense. They just can't seem to get around them. Then I have the Bills beating the Dolphins. Again, just talent-wise, Bills far outshadow what the Dolphins got. And then I have the Browns beating the Chargers. Then we get into the conference. I have the Packers beating Washington football team. I think the Packers defense is good enough, just good enough to, keep the Washington football team from not scoring every drive. And the Packers, I think, can score enough to overcome that because I do think that they'll be in the top 3 in offense again this year. We'll see how that works out. Then I have the Bucs beating the Rams. I almost gave this game to the Rams, but I mean, if we're being honest, I don't know if Stafford knows how to win yet, even though he's a 30-something-year-old quarterback. He's in his mid-30s at this point, but does he know how to win? He's never won a playoff game. Maybe next year, but I just don't trust him against
Kirk
Tom
as
Brady.
well. It's a conversation as Vikings fans you have with Kirk is like, does he even know how to win? Like he's even like in Stafford's the same situation.
Then I have the Chiefs beating the Ravens. I think that's pretty standard. And then I have the Bills getting beat by the Browns. I think the Browns are legit. The only reason I think that they could be a team that could go 15-1 in another division, except that they're in the second best division in football, and their easy games are against Joe Burrow and the Bengals fairly loaded offense. That's not easy. So I think they'll be battle tested and ready for the playoffs. All right, so then we get into the conference. I have the Packers going over the Bucs like Elijah. I kind of say that with a sigh because I have no faith in that necessarily happening. It's hard to bet against Tom Brady, and we'll just see the way it goes. I think the Packers on paper are a better team, but it's not about paper necessarily. So we'll have to see once we get into the season. And injuries played a huge part because as a Packers fan, I think I can say that if we'd had David Bakhtiari at tackle, it's a whole different ball game. Rodgers wouldn't be getting sacked left and right like he was in the last championship game. Then I have another upset because I'm all in on it. I have the Browns going to the Super Bowl against the Packers, and I have them beating the Chiefs. A couple problems I have with the Chiefs. Their cornerback room is a little bit of a question, and I think that their wide receiver 2 position is unfilled. The Browns just drafted JOK, and he is like the perfect defender to take out someone like Kelsey. And we forget Kelsey's 32 years old now. He's not getting young. His athleticism is eventually going to not be there anymore. And you just subjected him to another game in another NFL season. So now he's playing 17 games, if he even makes it through the entire season. So I think that the Browns have a lot of counters to what the Kansas City Chiefs would want to do on offense. And then I'm going to have to go with my Packers over the Browns 31-24. I think the Packers pick off Baker Mayfield when he's driving to try and come and tie the game. And I think they pick him off with like 3 minutes left in the game.
I think I think that you mentioned JOK there though. That I think he was the best. I think he was the steal of the draft. That guy.
I cannot believe he lasted to like the mid of the second round.
He was a top 15 projection pick, and he somehow ends up midway through the draft. And I thought he was the best. I thought he was better than Micah Parsons. I do. I still think he is. I don't think Micah Parsons is as good. And I think he will make a big difference in Cleveland. The only reason I had Cleveland getting knocked out in the first round is literally because they were playing Kansas City the way it worked out. Like, I do agree with you that if they played Buffalo, as much as I like Buffalo, I think they beat Buffalo as well. But
so for my AFC, for the first ranking, I have Buffalo, the number 1 seed, taking the tie over Kansas City. I'm really high on Josh Allen coming in year 4.
Yeah.
I got KC, of course, second seed, winning the AFC West. Division's a little weak. Mahomes is, going to be Mahomes. Not really shocking there. Baker Mayfield, I think Cleveland's going to be a 3rd seed. I'm just really big on the Browns, as Caleb is as well. I have Tennessee with the 4th seed, weak division, and then Wentz. I mean, he should be back within, was it week 1, week 2? No, he's coming back.
He's back for week 1. I think
he should be back.
Supposed to start.
But he gets hurt every other game. But if he can stay healthy, like you said, y'all said the Colts can be dangerous, but that's just kind of like an issue. I just think Tennessee's more of a safe pick. And then with the fifth seed, I think the Chargers, Herbert, I think if he didn't have Mahomes in the division, I think they'd easily win the AFC West without a doubt. I think Lamar Jackson, they're going to win the sixth seed. And then I have Ben Roethlisberger going out with a little bang with a seventh seed in the last wild card, trying to snag that. And then jump over the NFC. Tom Brady on the Bucs, they just got even better. They drafted a defensive end out of Washington. I'm blanking on his name right now, but
Tryon.
Tryon.
Yeah, they said he turned heads. He can't. They said that defense is just as good as it was when they limited Mahomes to not even a single touchdown in the Super Bowl. Granted, he was a little banged up, but still, that's impressive. And then I have Caleb's Packers at the second seed. I have Matthew Stafford with the third seed with the LA Rams. It's kind of unfortunate that Cam Akers got hurt because I was really high on him in fantasy, but I still think they have enough weapons. I think Cooper Kupp is a very underrated receiver. I think that defense is absolutely absurd, honestly.
Yeah.
And I have like you're talking about the Washington football team. Their D-line may be the best D-line in football. It's absolutely ridiculous. Chase Young he's gonna be a star in the league for years and years. And then I have Arizona actually beating out Seattle for the fifth seed for the second spot in that division. Actually, for the third spot, I have San Fran as a sixth seed, Arizona fifth, San Fran sixth, and then I have the Vikings with the seventh seed. And so when that comes to playoffs, I'm just going to jump to the championship games. So in the AFC, I have Buffalo and Cleveland. I do not think Kansas City is going to make it to the AFC Championship game this year.
Spicy.
That's my spicy take. The Kansas City Chiefs will not be in even the AFC Championship game.
That is very spicy.
That's pretty spicy. I think they're going to get knocked out by Cleveland in the divisional round. And then actually no, they get beat by Buffalo. My apologies. And then so I have Buffalo beating Cleveland in the AFC Championship goes through one. And then when it comes to the NFC Championship, this is maybe a little spicy as well. Not as spicy as that, but a little spicy. Aaron Rodgers will not be playing the NFC Championship game. Matthew Stafford will be playing Tom Brady. As you're talking about, Stafford hasn't been in those moments a lot, as Rodgers and Brady and several other talented quarterbacks have. So Brady takes the NFC Championship game and loses to the Bills, and the Bills are finally Super Bowl champs. That's my prediction for the NFL season. That's my also another little spicy take with the Bills actually getting done. Losing 4 Super Bowls in a row, I can't even imagine how tough that'd be, but we'll see what happens.
I have some sort of experience with that. We've lost 4. We haven't lost them in a row. We've lost 4.
Pepperidge remembers.
I can imagine losing 4 in a row. That's just after the second or third one, I'm just gonna stop watching. That's
heartbreaking.
I think I know the first game, I'm pretty sure they lost by a field goal, and then I think the last 2 didn't they get absolutely demolished? Like I'm pretty sure the last 2 Super Bowl they just got destroyed. I think they played. I know they played Dallas in one of those Super Bowls.
They played them back to back. The first time they played the Giants and they missed a field goal to lose the game.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Second time they played Washington, and Thurman Thomas forgot his helmet. Just started the day off in a really bad way. And then they played Dallas back to back and got their absolute butts handed to them. But
yeah, Dallas is ridiculous back in the day.
I think there's a couple things we can get from if we look at our playoff predictions. I think that we can see that the AFC is a lot more top heavy than the NFC. There's a lot of depth in the NFC because you look at the AFC teams, we all had at least 6 of the same teams in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty crazy. And there's 7 teams in each division, in each conference in the playoffs, and we got 6 of those the same.
I agree.
And a couple of us got the same. So, but in the NFC, there literally is the debate: San Fran, Arizona, Los Angeles. You have a bunch of different teams. Seattle. You have a bunch of teams. Minnesota as well. Like a lot of teams that literally are solid football teams. Carolina. Like solid football teams that have a ton of potential to go out there and win games. And you could see a bunch of divisions where in the NFC where 10-7 doesn't get in the playoffs. When the AFC, I'm pretty sure if you go 10-7, you're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
This is kind of off topic for what we were supposed to talk about, but I just want to hear y'all's segment on this. So, who's the one player fantasy wise you think is going to be boom or bust? Like, you think they're either going to be amazing or they're going to be awful this season? Me personally, who I think you could take a chance on, but it'd be more bust than boom, is Kyle Pitts. I think he's either going to be amazing because he's going to be a second option in Atlanta, or he's going to be absolutely awful.
I feel like he's going to be awesome. I wanted him, and he got taken in the 6th round in my first draft that I did, which I thought was insane. I mean, because he's a rookie. I wanted him in the 8th. I was going for him in the 8th, and he got taken in the 6th.
He looked good in preseason, but I mean, it's just
they didn't even play him that much, did they? I mean, when a rookie who you took 8th overall, and you're not playing him barely at all, and he's a tight end.
I think the last game they played him a little bit here and there. He caught a couple passes, but y'all do you have a player that you can see is either like 100% boom or bust?
Mine is very spicy. You said who's yours?
T. Higgins.
T. Higgins. Of course you are.
Because it all depends on Jamar Chase. If Jamar Chase is suddenly like a god, instead of dropping every pass thrown to him in the preseason, then T. Higgins is suddenly more of a 1B to 2 option. If Jamar, they bring him along slowly or he keeps dropping things, whichever of the two, T. Higgins is number 1 on, a team where he got 981 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns, I believe it was, last year with over half of a season with no Joe Burrow. That man is a beast, and he's only 22.
I'm going to go really spicy with mine because I'm basing it off of injuries and injury history. I love this player to death. Christian McCaffrey is the most boom or bust guy, in my opinion. The guy misses 6 to 7 games a year, it feels like. And as good as he is when he's playing, how much do you really trust him to stay healthy?
So you wouldn't take him 1 overall? Because like in most leagues, he's going 1 overall.
Absolutely
you wouldn't
not.
take him 1.
I would take a Derrick Henry. I would take a Dalvin Cook. Because even though Dalvin Cook has a little bit of injury history, he misses 1 or 2 games a year. When McCaffrey goes down, he's out for 6-7 games. It's never just a couple games. Derrick Henry never gets hurt. Saquon Barkley's had 1 injury in his whole career pretty much. Like, and it was an ACL tear that's usually those are just freak to begin with.
Freak injury. Yeah.
So, and for my thing is if I'm going to 1st round pick, I got screwed by this last year. So I'm speaking from personal experience, not by McCaffrey, but just by if you get a guy that gets injured pretty often in the 1st or 2nd round, it completely will derail your season. I had Michael Thomas and Julio Jones last year, and they missed, I think it was 16 games combined last year. If your first 2 picks in your draft miss 16 games combined, you're not going to have a very good season. So I guess that's my issue with McCaffrey is seeing how he's going number 1 overall. I'm not mid-1st round, I would be all in on him. Even 4 or 5, I'd be all in on him. But I feel there's a lot safer options that have a lot less of an injury history that are available there early in the draft. And if you mess up that 1st overall pick, your whole draft's ruined because you don't get a pick till 20 anyways. Or if you're in a bigger league, 24, 26, something like that.
So do y'all want to switch over to some college ball real quick?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about here with college is game of the week. With the college football season starting this next week. Well, technically it started last week, but I mean, if you're really getting excited for Nebraska and Illinois, we got some issues. But this week is really the week that we're starting to actually get real football, and it's exciting. And I just want to start by saying, obviously, if we were a normal sports show, the number 1 game of the week is Georgia and Clemson, like 2 top 5 teams, and who I think is going to be a national champion in Georgia. It's the number 1 game of the week. There's no question. But if we're talking about game of the week, excluding that game, what do you all think is the game of the week?
So personally for me, I think it gets slightly spicy. But Penn State and Wisconsin, Penn State is bringing back, out of 22 starters, I saw they're bringing back about 17 starters. which is pretty good, if you're bringing back that much. And they were actually starting the season off last year 0-5, that tragic loss to Indiana. And then they rallied and won their last 4. And I think they just kind of have a hot streak coming into the season. And then Wisconsin's projected to play Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. So I think that's kind of like an important game super early that not a lot of people are talking about. So what do y'all think?
For me, I'm going to go number 9 Notre Dame versus Florida State. And I know that's a bit of a surprise maybe, but I'm really interested. For me, it's game of the week because I'm interested to see what happens to Mckenzie Milton now. It's been 3 years since he basically just destroyed his entire knee. But I mean, before that, he was in the running for Heisman. And we're talking about a UCF program that was only just then starting to really find its legs as a college team. And he's going to a Florida State Seminoles team that has a lot of questions, but undeniably they have a lot of talent because Florida State always recruits relatively well, even when they haven't been good. And Notre Dame, anytime a team is ranked really high, but they have turnover at the quarterback position, I think you got to be interested in the game a little bit. Notre Dame's ranked here at number 9, but they're not starting Ian Book anymore. So I think that's going to be more of a game because you're talking about nerves from a new starting quarterback in his first game up against a team that's known as a powerhouse in the past and is trying to get back there. I think Florida State will definitely try and make a statement. I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a high scoring game. I think Notre Dame is going to run the ball all over the place. And I think Florida State could be a balanced attack, but I think they'll pretty much gain yards and touchdowns where they want to too. I don't think there's going to be a huge defensive struggle there.
And Florida State's one of those programs that it's kind of like, I guess less like Tennessee, but they're one of those, programs that eventually will get back to their former glory. Tennessee is a long ways away, but I think Florida State's a lot closer.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's like 1 or 2, 3 years away, but Tennessee, in my opinion, is like 6 or 7. They're so bad.
They always are.
Yeah,
I think I think I like that. I like both of those picks. Going briefly off of Mckenzie Milton, my first year at UCF was when we went undefeated. So I mean, I saw Mckenzie Milton at his highest of heights. I mean, in his second year, he was better than he was that undefeated year. People forget that. 2018, that guy was legitimately top 6, top 7 in Heisman voting and was honestly playing the best. He was one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And I would say you could even argue he was the best in the college football that year. So, I mean, if he comes back 80% of his former self, he's going to be better than any quarterback that Florida State's had since Jameis Winston. No question. And I do think Notre Dame is definitely vulnerable. I think I could easily see Notre Dame going 6-6 this year. I know that's a very hot take for sure.
Spicy take.
I mean, because Notre Dame obviously has been in the playoff multiple times in the last few years. But if you look at Notre Dame's history under Brian Kelly, they always have 1 or 2 seasons there in a rebuilding year where they randomly go from being 11-1 or 12-0 to 6-6. And I think this is that year for them. But so I think that's going to be a good game. My thing is Indiana and Iowa. I think this game has a ton of riding on it. Obviously, it's a division game. I mean, a conference game. So you're going to have obviously that on the line. But I think this really will. Iowa's always going to be 8-4, 9-3 every year. This is what they do. Indiana, on the other hand, I think is one of the most intriguing teams this year in college football. You bring back Michael Penix, who is an absolute stud, and you have just a really good offense, very experienced offense. You lost Walt Failure, but you still have a lot of receivers in that roster. They're really solid. You got a pretty good defense. But I think Indiana is the most boom or bust team this year. I could easily see them losing just to Ohio State this year. But I also could see them losing 4 to 5 games this year. And I think how they – huh?
Go ahead.
I was saying, I think that this game will really show what kind of Indiana team we have. Is this Indiana team going to be a team that's going to go out there and go beat a Cincinnati? It's going to go – I mean, obviously beat Iowa in this game. Are they going to go out there and beat Penn State? Are they going to beat these teams that are good Big Ten teams? And are they going to be a threat to beating Ohio State potentially? Or are they going to be a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team like your typical if your typical Iowa usually is. And with this being at Iowa, I could easily see it going Iowa's way. I think Indiana does get it done because I think they are a pretty solid team. I think I probably have them losing 3 or 4 games this year at tops, but I could easily see Iowa pulling it off. And I think if Iowa does win this, I see Indiana losing 5 or 6 games.
Iowa's always a tough out because of that defense, but
Exactly.
the last time they had a competent quarterback was CJ Beathard. I just on your point about returning starters too, they lost Whop Phillier on offense, but on defense they only lost Jamar Johnson at safety. I mean, that was pretty much the only loss that they had on defense that was major. That's a lot of returning starters who are key cogs of your team. A lot of leaders returning.
I mean, I think they're going to be good, but I just think that this. I mean,
we've never 10-2.
Yeah, we've never seen Indiana be this good before. So I think it's kind of hard to see them repeating what they did last year. And that's why I say this game's so important, because I think that if their season gets off to a bad note, we could start seeing them free fall down again.
They could be like Minnesota for those couple of years there where they were really good. I mean, they're still a good team. Minnesota isn't a bad team by any means, but yeah. Well,
after that, I mean, let's get into the upset of the week. We're going to end every show with the upset of the week in college football, because that's the most fun part about college football, in my opinion. Obviously, you have your playoff and your conference games and your all that. The upsets are the most fun thing. That any team can come up and bite somebody every once in a while. And the way college football is, there's so many dominant teams. If one of the dominant teams does get upset, then it's front page news every single time. So who are your all's upset pick this week? Or like, we don't have to, I'm not saying you have to choose them to get upset, but who do you think is going to be the most at risk team to get upset?
Hey, speaking of, Iowa is a hard place to play, and it's known for that. Virginia Tech is arguably a top 10, top 15 venue and one of the hardest places to play in, at least in the ACC. And that's where the mighty Tar Heels are heading to on Friday night at 6 o'clock on ESPN. So we'll see what North Carolina is, made of. I think they're kind of a dark horse for playoff. I don't think they'll make it, but I think they'll finish maybe 6th or 7th in the final rankings behind Sam Howell, who I think is going to be, maybe a top 10 pick. I'm really high on him going to NFL. But I think that UNC has a good chance to lose against Virginia Tech. I think it's aligning. If it was at UNC, I would say a different story, but it's aligning perfectly for Virginia Tech to take this.
Blacksburg is nuts.
Yeah, Blacksburg is insane. It's hard to play there. There's a reason why they have a lot of upset wins up there compared to away. But so what's y'all's upset picks?
I would like to comment on that too. I totally agree with you, because they're supposed to. I just read this. North Carolina is supposed to miss their starting receiver Bo Corrales too. Looks like he's supposed to be out for the season opener, so that doesn't make it any easier on Sam Howell. So we'll see how that goes. My pick, it's a little bit more dark horse, I think, is LSU number 16 over at UCLA. And, I think a lot of people who wanted to watch premium college football in week 1 were watching UCLA just destroy Hawaii. No one was surprised there. That's not a shock by any means. But at the same time, it's Division I on Division I. Anytime you see a team kill someone else 44-10, you got to take a little bit of note of it. Dorian Thompson's going to his 4th year there at UCLA. Chip Kelly started to establish that program like he wants to. He's not a great NFL coach, but the man can coach in college and he can recruit. And LSU, again, everything in any level of football really relies on your quarterback. There's just so many questions at LSU with quarterback. No one distinguished themselves last year when they were playing, and it was a horrible season for them. And it's not like they're either returning a whole bunch of people, and it's not like they're losing a whole bunch of players either, and it's not addition by subtraction. So I'm worried that as good as LSU's defense can be, I don't think in a high-scoring college football kind of climate, I don't think LSU is a team that can really ever feel safe on a weekly basis, because if a good offensive team comes along, they could just light them up, and LSU's offense might not be able to keep up. I don't necessarily believe that UCLA will win, but I think it'll be a lot closer than a lot of people are predicting.
LSU is one of those very inconsistent teams. We saw what they were with Joe Burrow. It was probably one of the best teams I've ever seen in college ball. But then, last year they lost a lot. And they were just inconsistent. I mean, they beat a really good Florida team. I mean, Max Johnson was a starting quarterback. He's returning this season. But, I mean, if it wasn't for that shoe being thrown, I mean, LSU wasn't going to win that game. So,
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think UCLA has a great chance to win that game.
I think that when it comes to UCLA, this is the year for Chip Kelly. If they don't at least go 8-4, 7-5 around there, he can just kiss his job goodbye. There's no way you bring him back again. And Chip Kelly's one of those guys. He was revolutionary at Oregon, changed the game completely. I've not seen that same once the league caught up to him, and once he went to the NFL and the league caught up to him, he comes back to college and college football already just adopted what he'd already done at Oregon. So I think that, DTR is a stud. I think he's a dark horse or Pac-12 player of the year. I think DTR is really, really good. And I think that could be an upset. And I'm not sure what to think about LSU because you literally have the controversy over their head with their violations. Plus you have, after last year not being a very great year, and I don't think Ed O is really that good of a coach. He's a good leader of men, but is that really making you a really good football coach? But so I definitely think that's definitely a really good possibility for an upset. I don't think I'd pick it, but I think that if UCLA did pull it off, it could really bode really well for the rest of their season. My upset pick is probably the spiciest take of all these. It was kind of inspired by Josh Pate, and he didn't really go as far of lengths as I'm going with it. He was saying to watch out for Minnesota against Ohio State. It's going to be a good game. I'm going to pick Minnesota to upset Ohio State.
That's spicy.
That's very spicy.
I know it's very spicy. And am I confident in it? Not really. I'm going to be completely Ohio State is loaded across the field. They are loaded with talent, but they always are. And Ohio State always finds a way to lose one stupid game. We don't know why. They just always find a way to lose one stupid game, whether it be Purdue, whether it be Iowa, just games that they should easily win by a couple touchdowns. They find a way to lose. And they're not usually that even close either. Usually it's a pretty good blowout. It's really weird. But I think this year, especially, I'm not anywhere near as high on Ohio State as a lot of the pundits are in the slightest. Obviously I'm picking Ohio State to get beat by Minnesota in the first week of the year. But first off, you're going on the road to Minnesota. First game with a crowd in 2 years. That's going to be quite the atmosphere. Minnesota's already got a pretty good home field to begin with. The last time we saw them play a full season, remember, last year at the Big Ten, I think it's really hard to take too much account of it, which is kind of why I'm thinking Indiana's going to be good, but I'm not sure. It's the same reason I think Minnesota's going to be a lot better than they're getting credit for. Because last year in the Big Ten, they weren't supposed to be playing a football season, and they had to literally play only a 6-game season last year because it took them so long to figure out to actually play a football season. So I think it's really hard to put too much stock into what Minnesota did last year. Yes, they lost Rashad Bateman, but I think you can lose a receiver, and it's what it is. It's a receiver. It's not going to make or break a team. And because of that, I look at Minnesota and I think that that's a dark horse in the Big Ten. I don't think they win the Big Ten, but I think they could definitely contend for the Western Division. And I just think this could be a very sneaky game. You have Ohio State looking forward to Oregon the next week, which is what everyone's talking about. But right before it, week 1 with a first-year starting quarterback going on the road in a environment that hasn't had fans in 2 years with a team that I think is very underrated, and you're in conference, which makes the game matter that much more when Ohio State's been very vulnerable to teams like that in the last few years. CJ Stroud's not Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And if Justin Fields was in this game, there's no doubt I'm picking Ohio State to win it. But CJ Stroud's a first-year starting quarterback that he was hyped up, but he was nowhere near as hyped up as a Justin Fields was. He's nowhere near as hyped up as a Trevor Lawrence, or even if you go to Alabama this year, it's nowhere near as hyped up as Bryce Young. You've got a young quarterback going on the road in a hostile environment that's not had a home game with fans in 2 years in conference. I just feel like it's a huge trap game, especially if you're looking forward to Oregon. Like, I think Ohio State beats Oregon by 2 touchdowns. But I think they lose this game because they're looking forward to it too much. I can even see them beating Oregon by 3 or 4 touchdowns because they're pissed off from this past game, if I'm being completely honest. But I think they do get upset by Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota they have about I would say he's a top 5, top 10 running back. Muhammad Ibrahim, he's pretty good, and then Tanner Morgan, he's the lead quarterback when they went 11-2.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Penn State. I think they beat Penn State at home, and Penn State was ranked really high. I mean, they have a good squad. I mean,
they only lost by a touchdown to Ohio State that year too.
Yeah,
I mean,
they should have beat Wisconsin too to go to the Big Ten championship. That was an upset. They were, I think, 10-1 on that game.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and they didn't. I mean, yeah, they don't have Bateman. They don't have Tyler Johnson that now plays with the Bucks. But I mean, they still have a fair share of that same team. So I mean, I think it's spicy, but I can see it. I can definitely see it happening.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
I'm bored of Ohio State losing. I mean, just chaos in general. And I mean, as Elijah and I have talked about, this could be potentially the 2007 season all over again in terms of just chaos everywhere.
Yeah.
I can see it. There really isn't that.
There's not that one dominant team this year, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of teams that every team has their spots in their team. It's like that could be a weakness.
Yeah.
But all right, well, to wrap up, what are you all looking forward to most this weekend? I'm assuming Colton is the Georgia Clemson game, being a Georgia fan. But
yeah. I actually almost went to that game, not gonna lie. But I don't know. I don't want to go all the way to Charlotte. I mean, I'm like 55, 45 confident in Georgia winning, but like that 45% is just not enough to take a chance on them losing. So I'll just be comfy from the couch watching it. But I guess real quick, what's y'all's takes on that game? Just real quick. Georgia.
Yeah. I wasn't impressed with Clemson's new quarterback's little audition that he did last year when Trevor was out.
And now they don't have ETN either. So
yeah.
I think Georgia wins in a really, really close game. I think it's probably 31-28, something like that. I think it's pretty low scoring for a college football game. But I just think I kind of agree with Caleb with this about the DJ situation. I think there's a lot of hype around DJ, and he is extremely talented.
Yeah.
But people are really hyping him up and forget that he literally lost the game to Notre Dame. And then that same Notre Dame team, Clemson went out and beat 31-3 in the playoff 3 weeks later with Lawrence there. So exactly. I'm not sold on DJ as much as a lot of people are. I think he's gonna be good, and I think they could be really good next year. But I also think I actually don't think Clemson wins the ACC. I think North Carolina gets it done. So
spicy.
I think that Georgia wins pretty close, but I think that Clemson is a little bit overrated this year because DJ I think is a little bit overrated.
Yeah, I'm really confident in JT Daniels in terms. I'm trying not to be as biased as possible, but I'm just confident because that Cincinnati team was a top 10 scoring defense last season, and for Georgia to come, have 2 scores in the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game was really huge in terms of his leadership and the role going into the next season. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm sure next time we have our podcast, we'll know the result, but it's going to be a good game. I mean, they're saying maybe game of the year already.
Yeah.
Well,
so a lot of NFL talent in that game.
A lot of people, a lot of guys will play on Sundays for sure. At least, I would say maybe 10, if not more. Probably more, to be honest.
Oh, I would say a good 20 to 25 guys.
20 to 30, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say even 20 to 30 isn't that unreasonable. I mean, I can see at least, handful of guys on each, like 5, 6 on each side of the ball, each team. That's how good they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, we'll be back next Wednesday, 8:30 again, and we'll be able to see what these results come out, and hopefully we'll be able to have some good discussion about that. Maybe some more spicy takes.
Hopefully have a Georgia W against Clemson, and hopefully all our spicy takes come true.
Some spicy commentary, yeah.
Yeah, our spicy commentary. Hopefully, our predictions are correct.
Mhm. Well, next week,
All right,
well,
next week,
for
8:30.
for the audience out there, next week with the NFL season starting the week after, we're gonna go ahead and we'll break down some fantasy stuff next week and kind of
These
see
predictions.
some of our who all we've drafted in our own personal teams and who we think could be really great and who we think could be that bust. So until next week, we're the Spicy Takes Podcast. We're out.
Peace.
See ya.